Roll call, please, Jane.
President Burke,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmey.
On vacation.
Vacation, okay. And Director Stockman.
Here.
Okay, Jonathan, Deputy Chief Jonathan Cox,
Here.
Chief Ian Larkin.
Here.
Jean Savory.
Here.
And myself. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Before we begin, it was just mentioned a moment ago that Jeannie McShane is not with us this evening. And as the board knows, but the public perhaps does not, that Jeannie, because of health reasons, has resigned from the board of directors. And I just wanted to note, first of all, that Jeannie has served the public on the board of directors of the Coastside Fire Protection District and the Point Montero Fire District. I'm not sure of the total years, but probably close to 18 or 19 years. And she has been invaluable in terms of so many things that we've encountered over the past decade plus. And we wish her well. And as mentioned a moment ago, at some time when it's appropriate, we will have a more formal recognition to her service to the Coastside. With that, would you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all. Moving on to public comment, we'll open the meeting to any member of the public who would like to speak.
I see there's a name Andy and Michelle Dragony are on, if there's any comments from them.
I don't have any comments, Chief.
Thanks, Andy.
Comments.
Sorry, Michelle, I stepped on you.
No comments.
Thank you. No comments.
No comments from either of the member of the public, no? With that, I will close the public comment period and move on to the consent calendar. I make a motion to approve the consent calendar. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes. Moving on to item 6, continuing business update on Vegetation Management Committee Action Plan. Director Stockman.
Yes. I'll begin by saying, as I spoke of last month, this is continuing education for me, and I think for the board as a whole, just in the reality of the risk of fire dangers. So again, this month I sat and on San Mateo County Fire Safe. I listened to them. They had a very great, very informed speaker this month that spoke to not only PhD, I don't have his name in front of me, but he spoke to climate change and then really what has built up historically, from everything of where, from the Native Americans, the processes they used to do to have natural fires, to disease of our forest, to the continuing building into the areas that endanger those homes. So we went into great detail, and again, it's a large group that sits in on those fire safe meetings. So it's part education and part understanding not only where we've been, but where we are going forward. That's just a brief summarization. There was a meeting this month, maybe some of you saw it in the local media, with the Mid-Coast Council. And at the end of my update here, I'll have Chief Cox filling in your blank spots, but from the district and CAL FIRE was Chief Cosgrave and Chief Sampson both attended that meeting. Supervisor Horsley was in attendance. Maybe from the past few months, you've seen where the Mid-Coast Council has brought up their concerns about especially El Granada and Quarry Park and talk of crown fires. I'll be on the record of saying, I'm always concerned that when those discussions don't happen without the fire district's involvement or without CAL FIRE's involvement or direction, sometimes I think it takes away from the common goal of what we're trying to achieve. But in that meeting, it sounds like it was represented and district participated. One of the big things was, I think that came out is that, there's a limitation of what we can do as a district in our guidance to staff, is that, especially as it relates to Quarry Park, that falls under county parks. But there is it seemed like what was expressed in that meeting was that there's no simple solution. All the solutions are cost prohibitive, and that it seems like the collective group approaches it as trying to make the changes wherever they present themselves and hope that that support from state and federal government comes at a time where there's more funding to do a greater good. So that's just my summary of that. Also, there's updates on the chipping program. One point was through the county supervisors that Supervisor Horsley is, there's $500,000 set aside to fire safe to do some work in El Granada, especially in the lower mediums. And those lower mediums were identified as being important because they're right of ways that belong to the county. They're in the residential areas. So they're trying to keep those, control those fuels that are mixed into the residential areas. And then also many of them are in the evacuation routes out of that El Granada area. And all that work would fall under works. There was also through CERT and Chief Cosgrave has been doing reports to the community, a 3-part series on how to prepare for our wildland season. And reminding the 3 topics were wildfire preparedness webinar. The first one was Ready, Set, Go. The second one, which happened last night, was defensible space and hardening your protective in your homes. And third one next week, I believe, is lessons learned from CZU. And I believe that's Chief Cox will be doing part of that presentation. That was, I asked Chief Cox what that attendance was. I wasn't able to attend either one of those first 2, but it has a great turnout of up to 600 to 700 people have been signed up to follow that presentation. So, that's a big part of our solution, or a piece of it is educating our community. So with that, I'll turn it to Chief Cox and he can add in the blank spots that I might have missed.
Thanks, Director Stockman. Just a few pieces. Those exact dates for the neighborhood chipping will be in El Granada on May, and I'm just opening the tab. May 18th, 19th, and 20th for selected streets in El Granada. So if anyone in the public goes to firesafesanmateo.org, they can actually find the dates for El Granada. Then there's also additional dates for Moss Beach and Montera for certain streets in those communities as well. So that's exciting news. That's a pretty big expansion of the neighborhood chipping program for people to be able to get fuel and vegetation around their homes off their property. Secondly, the next action item on our veg management action plan that we'll be working on over the next few weeks is ensuring that we send that letter of support to the Board of Supervisors for their current efforts at the direction of the board to continue to work and focus on eucalyptus removal, and specifically the streamlining of the permitting process for removal. So you can anticipate that coming before the board next month. And just, a really good engaged public right now, very concerned about the fire risk on the El Granada community. And I think, that we like to see people who are concerned, because that usually leads to either individual action or collective action, which is really what the board has been trying to kind of promote in the community and make sure that we reduce that risk. So things are moving forward. I appreciate Director Stockman's kind of engagement on this and really helping us shepherd it along. Thank you.
Hey, Chief Cox, just one item to correct Director Stockman. I believe the lessons learned meeting occurred last night, and the defensible space home hardening happened the week prior. And Chief Cox, can you confirm that?
Yeah, that's good clarification. That was last night. Those are all available online. And I know our PIO is going to send out those links on social media and email again, so that everyone who wasn't able to view it live can go back and view it themselves.
Well, first of all, thank you, and Chief Cox, thank you very much for that. It's a critical issue, and please keep active as you can. Keep the board informed, and whatever we can do to implement the action plan or add to it, I'm sure it will be very agreeable with the board. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. Moving on to item B, review and discuss, approve the updated April 22nd, 2021 Coastside Volunteer Firefighter Program Handbook. Chief Cox.
Thanks, President Burke. You'll notice the updated handbook as a part of the board packet. There, if you remember, this packet was really designed by Chief Larkin several years ago to be that guiding document for the Coastside volunteer firefighters. It's serving a great purpose. Really what we're bringing to you is just some minor modifications, specifically some modifications about response requirements and attendance to bring in alignment with labor practices for volunteers. That and a few small items such as PPE issuance and minor modifications with grammar and text. Apart from that, no major changes, and the document has been reviewed by district legal.
To begin with, I'll make a motion to approve the Coastside Volunteer Firefighter Program Handbook. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Discussion. I just have a question. First of all, I thank you for the update. It makes it much clearer, and I'm pleased with it. The other program was some 2+ years old, I believe, with that. I guess the question I have is that two questions. One is the reporting structure. What is the reporting structure within the volunteer program? Who reports to who?
Yeah, so they have a volunteer chief who is really the single point of contact for the volunteer program. And then that volunteer coordinates with the training chief as well as the division chief of operations on either administrative operation issues or on training issues for the district. But as they're not an independent organization anymore, they come directly under operations, and that is obviously Chief Cosgrave.
All right, thank you. The other item I would just ask you to take a look at, Chief, and that is that the board, I believe also 2+ years ago, passed a Coastside volunteer policy, and which complements, of course, this document you have here. I would just ask you to just take a look at that to see whether it's compatible and where there's nothing that we're missing with the policy versus this handbook, if you would, please.
Absolutely.
I believe we have a motion and a second to approve the handbook. Roll call, please, Gene.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes.
President Burke,
Yes.
passes 3-0 by roll call.
Moving on to item C, continued business, weed abatement. Chief Cox.
This
In fact,
is, sorry.
what we're doing is having opening a public hearing for any member of the public who has any objections to the proposed removal of such weeds. Do we have any comments from any of the public?
I do not see
No.
any.
Then I will close the public hearing on the weed abatement for property owners having any objections. Moving on to new business. Item A, review and discuss options available to the board per Health and Safety Code 13852 to fill a vacancy created by Director McShane's resignation effective April 15th, 2021. Chief Cox.
Thank you, Director Book. This is in direct response to Director McShane's resignation. And for the actual details of it, I'm going to pass it over to District Legal.
Yes, good evening. As you've discussed this evening, Director McShane has tendered her resignation, and that triggers the need for the board to take action. You have an option to either call for an election or to fill this vacancy by appointment. And on page 2 of your staff report, it outlines the timeframes within which you need to act. And it's basically 60 days. So what the board should discuss this evening is whether or not you would like to send out an advertisement that you would be considering folks for appointment, and to then at a public meeting consider anyone who would apply and make that appointment, or to call for a special election. There's one other option, which is not an active option, but a passive one, which is if the board does nothing, then this rolls to the County Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors can then choose to make the appointment. Historically, when there have been vacancies on the board has chosen to fill those vacancies by appointment. With that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Let me just add one other thing, that if I recall correctly, that if we should go by election, which I don't believe we would do, it would be at a cost of approximately $100,000.
That is our best estimate that we've been able to
Okay.
get from the county, yes.
Well, as Jean has stated, in the past, when this has happened, the board has chosen to appoint an individual, and what would be required is to, I believe, as I recall, the process is we advertise the opening and see what who applies. I believe then we would have at least one meeting to interview the candidates. And at some point prior to, is it June, in the June meeting, we would have to select a candidate.
That's correct.
Comments, Steve or JB?
No, I was just looking it over, and it appeared to me that we have to do it. I was gonna ask the question, would we do it at the June meeting? And you answered it already.
Steve?
My comment, yes, my comments are, I'm very much in favor of an appointment. I think just because of, if we had 6 candidates out there that were competing to sit on this board, it might be an approach, but we've seen from our last 2 or 3 election cycles, no one's stepping forward to compete for these positions. I do think it's important that for us as board members, and actually the community members too, that are listening, is not only advertising that, but start getting out there and thinking who to recruit for these positions that are going to be the future leadership of this board. And there are some great people out there, and like everybody's, pressed for time and their sense of what they can commit to. But for Michelle that's listening today, I would hope through her, and as an example, who's well connected to the entire community and those that are already serving in different functions, to try to encourage people to step forward in the application. I have a few thoughts. I have a few candidates, hopefully they will participate, that I'll reach out to, and I hope the rest of the board members do too. And so we have the biggest selection of people that are willing to serve. And that's all I have. President
Let
Burke.
me just ask or make sure that I understand who, if we appoint somebody at our June meeting, that person would serve to the end of Director McShane's term, which is in 2022, and then would have to run for election again.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
There is also the possibility, just to be clear, that depending on how redistricting goes, that somebody that might be appointed might not be eligible to run in 2022. So it's a double-edged sword, and I think at least we make that clear to any applicants.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Then I move that the board move
Oh,
forward.
I was just going to make a suggestion that you reach out to the CERT people, write up a couple of paragraphs, like a request for proposal, if you will, request to serve, which explains what their responsibilities are, what nights they have to show up, and that type of thing. And then I can post it as well on my website and put it out to social media. But I also think posting it straight to the Coastside CERT. They've got 1,900 people on their email, and they're all concerned about fire. So I think you've got probably a big audience where you might find more people than less. And certainly, given that the election is going to happen in just another year, it gets people thinking about it for the next year.
Thank you.
Especially if in the RFP it says something like that. It's just till the end of what month it is in 2022. So it's not too long. It gives somebody just enough time to see if it's something that they really want to run for.
Thank you. Chief Cox, I'm sure the notices would be in the local newspaper, on our website, and also on the CERT website, and any other avenues that might distribute the information would be appropriate.
Director, Chief Larkin, I have one clarifying question for Gene.
Excuse me?
Chief Larkin, I have one clarifying question for Gene. Gene, with the June 14th date, would that require us to have a special meeting to meet that 60-day time frame, or can it wait till our regular scheduled meeting?
No, we would need to do a special meeting in June because it does need to be done by June 14th. But I'm thinking if the board indicates tonight, and it appears they are indicating that they wish to go the appointment route, then we could get the appointment notification out. And then the board could perhaps consider candidates even at the May meeting and could make an appointment as early as that meeting. And if we couldn't make that meeting, then a special meeting thereafter.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see, I believe we have a motion and a second to go the appointment route. Roll call, please, Gene.
President, I'm sorry, Chief, let me start again. Director Stockman,
Yes.
Vice President Cox,
Yes,
and President Burke,
Yes,
and that is 3-0 roll call.
the process begins.
Thank you.
All right, great. Moving on. Item B. Review and discuss agreement for districting services. Chief Cox.
Thanks, President Burke. This is a result of the direction from the board last month and Coastside Fire Protection District for board members. We executed the RFP that was approved last month, and the report in front of you is a report by and are making a recommendation to the board as to an agreement that we believe with redistrict partners for the services that you requested.
And President Burke, my partner Kai Reese is on the meeting right now, and he looked at the RFP responses with Chief Cox, and so he is also available to answer any questions you might have.
Well, first of all, the staff report is very thorough. You've done due diligence in looking at the two responses that we had to the RFP. The total for the services is some $53,000, I believe.
61.
61, sorry, thank you. And the types of services, the number of meetings, and those things that are required are in the proposal and have been reviewed by staff. It looks straightforward to me. It's something, frankly, that we do not have a hell of a lot of choice on. So any questions or comments? Steve, JB?
I'm not qualified to comment on the qualifications of whoever we hire, so I guess we just have to move forward.
Steve, any?
No, none. No, just move forward and get it addressed. I do see that, we're kind of spread out now between the four of us on the board. So it looks like, it'll most likely come down to the way the coast is divided, that there'll need to be another participant somewhere in that Miramar Half Moon Bay area. I don't know what direction recommendations will be made, but from where you are, Gary, in the southern part of town, and me in El Granada, and JB and Bruce in the Monterey area, I think that's how it's going to play out. So,
Well, yeah, you're right. The number of additional meetings for the board is exciting. The amount of detail, and I'm sure that we will have considerable input from, as we should, from different communities or individuals as to their opinions, but ultimately we will get it done in appropriate time. So let's see, we have, I'm going to make a motion to adopt resolution number 2021-10, resolution of the Board of Directors of Coastside Fire Protection District to award an agreement for districting services to Redistricting Partners LLC. Do I have a second?
second.
Further discussion or comments?
I think not wasting additional time debating whether or not we're going to do it is the way to go. There's at least one of the district that may be laboring under the conception that they're not going to have to do it. I hope they have deep pockets.
Yeah. With that, roll call, please, Gene.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Vice President Cockrell,
Yes,
President Burke,
Yes.
passes 3-0 by roll call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, new business item C, review and approve the financial statements and independent auditor's report for the year ending June 2020. Chief Cox.
Thank you, President Burke. This is required that the board conduct this audit every year. As we have seen since I've been here, which was last year is my first audit, no major changes and meeting all of the requirements for a audit of the financials within the board.
Let me, first of all, this is what is in the terminology called the unqualified audit. That means there are no noticeable errors or omissions, which is certainly good news that that's the case. I'd just like to, without going through it in detail, just point out a couple of items that I think are worth noting. If you look on page 3 of the audit, it says the financial highlights. And just a couple of items. It says that government-wide net position was some $25 million. A year ago, it was some $22 million. Our general revenues were $12 million for the year. In the previous year, which had been 2019, they were $12 million. So basically even. Total government-wide assets, however, were $38 million a year ago, and in 18 were some 17 million. So a sizable increase in that. And the net capital assets total 19 million versus 14 million. So the total program expenses, the last item in that financial highlights, were $10 million. The previous year, they were $8 million. But if you recall, we had a number of staff vacancies during that year, which I think accounts for most of that. The balance sheet is on page 10 for people that want to really delve into the key items, and it's straightforward. I don't think there's anything unusual in that. I would point out on page, let's see, what is this? Page, I think it's page 4. Page 14. Take a quick look at page 14 with me if you have that in front of you. I get the wrong number. I'm sorry. Let me just say I can't find the exact page, but in here regarding, it really refers to our PAS position on retiree health. And at the time the audit was done, we had a PAS balance of $3.8 million. And if you look at our packet today, that PAS balance has gone up to some $4.4 million, which is certainly a very healthy increase. And the last item I would just call your attention to very briefly is if you look on page 24, if I get this one right, it has to do with the CalPERS information that's on here. And if you look at the balance that we owed, we the district, for our old union individuals that we owe for them, this is not Cal Fire, this is the old union. We have a total liability, if you will, in 2019 was $40 million. The total balance a year later in June of 2020 was some $42 million. Now, you note that we have assets in both of those cases of 28 and 29 million. The net plan liability in 2019 was $12 million. In 2020, it rose to $12,500,000, even though in that intervening year, we had paid over another $1 million into CalPERS. And each time we discuss CalPERS, I get a little emotional in this thing, but you know, it's a sinking ship. I mean, it's just it seems to go bad every time we look at it. And also, if you look at that same page down a little bit, it gives us an example of what could happen financially. Our current discount rate is 7.1, and at which we owe $12 million at that particular rate. CalPERS has been discussing changing that discount rate. And if in fact they were to reduce it by 1 percentage point, the amount we would owe would go up $6 million, go from 12 to $18 million. Conversely, which I'm not very optimistic would happen, if they increased it, it would go down from 12 to $7 million. And it's easy to ignore the amount of money that at some point in the future, the district is going to have to fund, but it certainly doesn't get any better each year, is my good news. With that, I'll make a motion on questions and comments. Anything, JB or Steve?
Is there any way that we can have speakers come to the board? You know, is there somewhere where PERS will speak to us directly to give us some encouragement or direction that addresses these issues? You know, they're faced by every community, every city and county. You know, it seems like, you know, we all share the concern about the vulnerability of the system. And I'm actually a PERS retiree, so I have a great deal of concern. But yes. I don't know if there's, you know, again, there's a certain acceptance of we don't have much ability to affect it. But I do think, just from my personal level, we could be better educated on what the forward plan is.
Your point's well taken, and I agree. I think education and understanding what's at stake is very important. And Steve, I would like to take your suggestion forward. We got a few things going on right now in the next couple of months, but perhaps in the fall we can do something and have somebody from CalPERS actually try to educate us even more so. Thank you.
Great.
Any other comments, JB?
None. No, I just have been watching this develop and saw that a number of years ago, the board in fact had a plan to terminate the debt by taking out a bond and paying it off. And it was something that we could afford, that was sustainable for us. And the board chose at that time to not do it. And now I think the board members, at least one board member that I'm aware of, regrets that decision. But at this point, we are where we are. And with short of declaring bankruptcy, I think we're on the hook for the whole amount.
Very good. With that, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-11, resolution accepting the June 30th, 2020 audited financial statements. Do I have a
Seconded.
Any further comments? Roll call, please, Gene.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
Vice President Burke, I'm sorry, Vice
Yes.
President Cockrell,
Yes,
and President Burke.
Yes,
That's 3-0
thank
by
you.
roll call. Thank you.
Board of Directors report, Financial Committee. We did not have a finance meeting. However, in your packet, there is the spreadsheet that is publicly available that shows all our current standings. I would just, in regard to the spreadsheet, we're now 3/4 of the way through the year. We have 71% of our revenue is been collected. You'd note, if you look at this quickly, there were only 39% of expenses for the year. However, that is misleading. We are still due 2 large CAL FIRE invoices, and we also have in that budget a new engine expense. So the expenses will go up significantly in the next period of time. Also in your packet is the PAS report for the month of March, and the gain was some $53,000 to a total of $4,424,000, which is in great shape. Also, there was another PAS report, and I'm not sure if this was distributed to each person. That just is kind of a detailed report, but it was kind of interesting to see that the return we've had with our investments in the PAS investment for the past year, it was 38%. For the past 3 years, 10%, 5 years, 10%. And since the inception of when we entered the PAS investment program in 2029, it's been 9.7%. Certainly a very healthy point. End of financial report. Any questions? A comment, Chief Cox, anything? Okay. The volunteer committee report, Director Cockrell.
I did not attend the meeting earlier, so I have no report.
Land and Structures Committee, Director Cockrell again. Director McKinney is absent this evening.
Nothing more than we've been discussing, and we will continue to evaluate the values of the property we have and Station 44 alternatives. We've spent some time, and I don't think there's any more secret locations out there. So it's just a matter of waiting to see how this plays out.
Very good. Vegetation Management Committee, Director Stockman, who had a report. Do you have other things to add?
No further than what was earlier.
Okay. Special District report. The only comment I would have, I have officially become a member of that special district, and I have gone through the orientation, and I have the booklet here if anybody would like more detailed information on the special district. The finance FDAC liaison report, no report. Emergency preparedness, Director Stockman.
Yes, and a question for you, Gary, to clarify, we're talking about special fire districts, right? Not special districts. Is that what we joined? Because they are two separate things.
Special fire district, correct.
Yeah. Okay, good. For the emergency preparedness community, there was an April 2nd meeting for KEEP, which I attended as a Zoom meeting. It was important that they had speakers that spoke to VOAD, and for those, VOAD is for volunteer organizations active in disasters. The speakers were Jim Hawley from our community, who's part of Red Cross, and then also Don Matei, we've met last month, who is part of the new county OES. They described the organization in what really it is. It's not responders, it's non-government, and it's KEEP acts as at VOAD and able to help coordinate community and faith groups to prepare to work together and be able to help in a disaster is a simple explanation. We continue to work closely with County OES to strengthen that VOAD connection. I think it brings some legitimacy to the volunteer groups on the coast side being part of a VOAD group. It gives access. VOAD is both national and state. In the state level, it's divided into northern and southern half. So it does bring you to a broader, it gives you a broader voice and a broader access to a bigger conversation. Another discussion item was also from Chief Cosgrave, where he updated and the community on the tsunami hazard maps. I think we talked a little bit about that last meeting, but one of the big things was, you know, there were some big changes in those maps and what that what's the correct word? How far the water comes up.
Yeah.
And to make it simple, and you know, before it was like 100-year model, and now they've used 1,000-year model. So that's where that biggest change is on where we see those lines redrawn as it relates to the coast side in our community. May 7th is the next meeting, and there's going to be the topic is going to be the Medical Reserve Corps, and that's going to be from Harrison Stein, who's part of County Human Services. So as I've spoken in the past, that group, that process of organizing into that Emergency Medical Reserve Corps continues to grow quickly. I don't think we're too far away to having a really active group with a high amount of numbers. Again, it's not all doctors, nurses, paramedics, EMTs, anybody that can help in that disaster where we're going to need triaging and treatment within our community. I already updated when we talked about the wildfire preparedness webinars, and that's the only other item I had on that. So that's complete.
Thank you, Steve. Moving on, attorney's report.
Nothing, thank you.
Fire chief's report. Chief Cox, Chief Larkin.
Yeah, just a few things. One is I just want to address the monthly statistics that are in your board binder. As you know, with the new county CAD system that we've gone to, the traditional statistical reporting mechanism is not there yet in the new CAD. So we don't have a way to access this data at the moment, short of going through every call one by one and pulling out all the data. So I anticipate we've been putting our requests into county public safety communications about what reports we need. We have not been giving a timeline as to when they might get those live for us to utilize, but that is why you're seeing those NAs in all of those statistics right now, is because of the reporting out mechanism with the new CAD. A few items. From
Ask one question.
Yeah.
In regard to that new CAD system, will it be more detailed in the information we're able to pull from it? So will there be a greater depth of information beyond what we currently use? Will it look different to us as board members?
Yeah, so it can. It's really about how we ask for the data. So if there's certain reports that we want, let's say time of day or time of year or response times by certain factors, those reports can be run. For now, we've just asked to recreate the current statistics that we have. But if we do find that we want to report on something else monthly, we can definitely request that from them.
I asked that question for another reason, is that I've looked at a couple other agencies that do their annual reports, and you see how they're able to pull out more data. And, I would use an example on the coast side is maybe it would show you how much service goes to calls that are for visitors to the coast side, or more broken down into parts of the coast side, from the individual, Montera, Moss Beach, so all those things are reflection. I think in this world now that, we can use that data to better educate our community, and also to make, I think what I see in successful year-end reports in those organizations that do use that data is the ability to make forward decisions, based on trends that are changing. So I have a very shallow understanding of that, but I know that then that's what's the purpose of my question is I think moving forward, we can use that information to better direct where we're going as a district.
Yeah, and I echo the sentiments there, Director Stockman. I think one thing that we've discussed, and it might even be part of the 7-year plan, is actually to make data real time and not have it a reporting metric, so that you could go on the website and look at things like where does the service mostly go or what time of day. I think right now, as public safety communications really irons out all of the issues with the new CAD, they're really focused on the core functionality. I think if we have this conversation in 9 months to a year from now, we can really start looking at vendors to link and have this information visualized for everybody in the community on the website, so that it's available all the time and you can get the latest data at any moment.
Great, thank you.
The a few items from the chief side of the house. COVID-19. We continue to get our PPE from the grant, the countywide grant. Crews are still taking their precautions, and we have no current cases within the crews assigned to the district. As far as the administration is concerned, you may have met our new staff service analyst, Christopher Spradley. He started this month. He's working primarily with the fire marshal's office on internal processes and ensuring the processing of plans and permits. If you haven't met him, please stop by and say hi. We're very excited to have him. On the management side, we met with Supervisor Horsley, myself, and Director Burke, and several members of the El Granada community regarding the Fire Station 41 lighting issue. And we have also been partaking in the county fuel reduction task force that is being led by Supervisor Horsley and Canepa, along with other stakeholders, looking at fuel reduction strategies across the county. We plan on conducting interviews for a battalion chief position in May. That is the split funded position between the county and the Coastside. That position was vacated when Chief Cosgrave promoted, so we should have those interviews completed by the end of next month. As far as outreach, we hosted those 3 webinars that Director Stockman spoke about. The 2020 annual report, that snapshot, should be arriving in mailboxes soon throughout the coast. Call volume wise has been average for the month. There was one significant incident, which was the San Benito house fire that occurred. The operations on that fire, I was impressed by. The first in engine was able to successfully rescue 2 individuals out of a window of the hotel, while the operator actually was able to get water on the fire from the front door by himself concurrently, which in my eyes is a very successful operation, because that had the potential to be a very different outcome.
Great.
Since then, the fire marshal's office, since then the fire marshal's office has had quite a bit of follow-up with the property owner. As far as training is concerned, the Truck Academy is coming up. We host a Truck Academy twice a year between the 2 programs. That's a 2-week academy starting in May. You may see them working on the coast. Classes in April at Station 40. As far as prevention is concerned, they're continuing to work on the weed abatement program, and they're just getting into the new cloud-based software that we approved last year for all inspections and permits. Chris is helping them along with that process. Just for your kind of intel, the volume of plans that the fire marshal's office is receiving at the moment is very high. So they are doing all they can to stay on top of plan reviews and inspections. And obviously a lot of engagement from the residents of El Granada regarding the eucalyptus and wildfire risk. As far as CERT's concerned, Chief Cosgrave recently hosted an hands-on training class at Station 40 for new CERT members. You may have noticed on the facility side, Station 40 has been repainted. Probably the most striking piece of that is the roof at Station 40. We didn't realize how dirty and rusted it was, and that has been completed. We anticipate on replacing the fuel vault that has corroded at Station 44 this month. And then we're going to be looking for some additional budgeted items next year for those security and safety measures at some of our facilities. Final item on facilities is fire station alerting, the actual alarm that goes off in the station when they get a call. Station 41 has the new alerting system. Station 40 and 44, their alerting system will be replaced by the end of the fiscal year, and that is partially reimbursable through the county JPA that reimburses through FireNet 6 for those systems to be replaced on an ongoing basis. Basically, the current system we have is so old they don't make parts for it anymore, so it's time. As far as apparatus is concerned, the new engine spec, we've been going back and forth with Pierce. They're working on the next set of drawings. Hope to have that done by the end of May, but they are also very impacted at the moment. We'll bring that to the board just as soon as it's done, but we want to get it right. Utility 40 and training 10 vehicles are nearing completion, if not completed today. And still working on outfitting the new battalion chief vehicles to meet the specs that the BCs need. The Volunteer Academy continues. I believe that ends on June 6th. And thank you to our volunteers who responded to the San Benito house fire. They're always a great resource and appreciated when they come out to those large incidents. We had county fire chiefs this month, and really the topic of conversation right now is just making sure that the new tablet system, the new MDTs we have in our rigs are working properly throughout the county. And finally, just 2 grants that we've submitted for reimbursement. The volunteer PPE grant, we had about $20,000 grant from the state for volunteer PPE, and we submitted for 3 new, I think it's like 6,000 channel radios that we received a grant for from the California Fire Foundation, and those have arrived, and we should be putting those in service. One last thing is the county, it looks like, is going to be the recipient of a $250,000 grant related to drones or unmanned autonomous systems is what we're calling them now. And Chief Lord is working with fire UAS program, and equipment. I think we'll be in a much better position to actually deploy it. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Chief. Chief Larkin? No comments? I just, let me explain just a little bit. Chief Cox mentioned a meeting we had with some concerned citizens in the El Granada area regarding the lighting. They were very concerned about proliferation and of the lighting. Presented a slideshow to us in terms of their concerns. It was a very healthy discussion, well intended on their part. The result of that is, as you probably know, we're installing a new modified lighting system on that Station 41. And once it's installed, we'll take a look at it again. But at this point, we are satisfied that it will meet the needs of the public and the safety of the firefighters. The end of that. I'd also just quickly mention I was involved a little bit with a discussion by Chief Cosgrave and Phyllis from CERT regarding the CERT issue within Ocean Colony. They both handled the meeting or Zoom meeting extremely well. I believe there's still some communications and organization issues that might be addressed in that community, but certainly they did a great job in handling all the questions. The other last point I have, what's the likelihood of when we can have an in-person board meeting? Anybody have any ideas? What's the?
Well, I'll weigh in, but I really don't have a very good answer for you. All of our public clients are exploring that right now, and everybody is a bit on hold until we hear what additional information will come up from the state before the June 15th deadline. So I will keep you apprised of anything we learn, but at this point, most of the public clients that we're aware of are not planning to go back to live meetings until at some point after June 15th.
Thank you, Gene. I just personally, I know yes, Steve, go ahead. Steve?
No, go ahead and finish. I just have 2 points before we end.
Well, my only point is personally that I'd love to see pictures of everybody here. You're very handsome, beautiful people, but I certainly think that something is missing when we don't have an
Absolutely.
in-person meeting, and I hope we can get back to it as soon as possible.
Here,
Steve?
here.
I agree. Just one point I forgot to make in my emergency preparedness presentation was that branches 3 and 4, which again represent the South County, La Honda, Pescadero, Skyline area, also graduated 48 new members. So we look at CERT as it relates to branches 1 and 2 in the community that the district represents, but that is a larger group. And so CERT strengthens itself in those communities also. And then a question for Chief Cox is, any updates on the expectation of that Main Street entry at the station, a completion of that?
That's a good question. I believe they called for 2 months of work on it, so I would imagine we're a few weeks away. It's going to be interesting to see how that actually works when it actually opens.
I think we're about 4 months into a 2-month job, if memory serves me correctly. Chief Cox, I have a question. Very nice video of the San Benito House fire, or at least our activities there. I especially appreciate that video. I saw a very nice video of truck 17 at that fire. Is there a reason we didn't see truck 41 at that fire?
Yeah, so the way our dispatch works in the district is it's really the discretion of the officer at 41 as far as the appropriate apparatus. We
Okay, thank
want to
you.
empower our officers.
Got it.
And we also have a truck with the new dispatch system coming from the Bayside. So truck 17 comes on the structure fires over here. But we will definitely speak with our crews about the decision, why or why not to, and if we need to make any modifications to that, we will.
No, the important thing, the job got done. That's the important thing. So I'm comfortable with that. I just happened to notice it was truck 17 and not truck 41. It's just a comment.
Yep, no worries.
Chief Cox, what does that mean for truck 17 coming from the other side? Is that part of the first alarm? Is that automatic first? Is that a second alarm piece of equipment? How does that work?
Yeah, so we tried to align the Coastside responses with the new CAD to meet the standard responses throughout the county. So in the old CAD system, there was no truck for all structure fires on the coast. So we added a truck 17 to all structure fires on the coast. And that really, more than anything, even though they're a little further away, it's the manpower. You get the 4 people straight off the bat from a truck company, and you can split them if necessary when they get there. So it's an addition to the structure fire response on the coast. And I think that was the first structure fire under the new CAD system that it got. And obviously it's helpful to get them up.
So you brought up the point of that initial attack and how well that went, but that doesn't mean, I'm trying to understand that doesn't mean that we have less people on. Are we waiting for a full response for that truck to come from the other side versus how we've done it before, right? So initially on that fire, you would have had 9. Does that mean now that you have 6 until your other 4 arrive?
No. It's in addition to. So a first alarm for the coast. It gets 2 battalion chiefs, 4 engines, a RIC engine, and a truck now. So.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all.
Any other comments?
I see Michelle Dragony has her hand up.
I think that's been up the whole time, but
Oh, has it? Okay.
No, I actually put it up. It was regarding the zooming, and it's AB 339 that's currently driving everything. It basically says that Zoom has to continue as an equity issue. So you probably won't see me back in the meeting again, but you guys could probably be in the same room and meet in person. And also there's also a question of translation. This is a really big equity bill in terms of getting people. I mean, the number of people that are following meetings online now from the comfort of their armchair is huge. I mean, Coastside wise, 10,000 increase. I mean, from 1 or 2 people who show up. So that's just something to think about, is how you're going to manage the meeting, both in the real people world, but also allowing for the remote people like me. For instance, I'm on the Half Moon Bay Parks meeting at the same time in my other ear, and then the MCC meeting's coming on right now. So that's sort of like the new way. And the funny thing is, Jenny McShane was following me around last month. She was at this meeting, and she pops up at the MCC meeting. So there you go.
Okay.
Great point.
Regarding the refurbishing of Station 40, Chief, I've driven by that on my way to my residence for some 10 years. And up until this past month, I could have sworn the roof on that place was either black or brown. And all of a sudden, in one day, it turned out to be bright red. It looks great. It looks great. Okay. Any other comments? Without objections, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Are you going to have a closed session? Hello? Is there going to be a closed session, which is on the agenda?
No.
No, there is none. Jean, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. See you soon. Hopefully.
Thank you.
See you, Gene.
Bye-bye.